دع الصبا فلقد
والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وآله وأصحابه أجمعين وسلم تسليما كثيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Sheikh began by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And he greets you all the greetings of Islam, the greetings of Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
سنتحدث بإذن الله تعالى في هذا اليوم عن رقية المرء بنفسه، عن رقية المرء بنفسه.
So the Sheikh today is going to talk about the performance of ruqya by a person, an individual upon their own self, how to do the incantation, recitation of Quran and the Sunnah upon oneself.
فبعد أن سمع كثير من المسلمين أمر الرقية والتداوي بها والانتفاع بها، أصبح كل واحد يتمنى أن يتعلم هذا الأمر ليرقي نفسه.
So you find that it's such a great interest from amongst the Muslims about the concept of performing ruqya and its benefits and how to take away any form of harm from the individual. It becomes important for the individual to begin to study and to learn how to perform the appropriate ruqya.
والأكثر منهم لا يعرفون هذا الأمر فتعودوا على الذهاب إلى الرقاة.
So you find many people are not clearly aware of how to perform ruqya, so they go to individuals who may slightly be deviated away from the path of not performing the ruqya appropriately.
وهذا أمر ليس بممنوع، فإن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم أمر أم المؤمنين عائشة رضي الله عنها كما في صحيح البخاري أن تسترقي أي تطلب الرقية من الغير.
So you find this is not something which is impermissible of going to go and ask someone to perform ruqya upon you. You find the hadith is narrated by Aisha in the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, whereby we find encouragement of the performance or asking someone to do ruqya upon oneself.
قد يقول قائل قد نحتاج إلى الذهاب إلى الرقاة إذا كان الأمر عسير.
So we find that some people may say that obviously it could be difficult for a person to perform ruqya themselves, so they have to go to someone who's able to perform the ruqya.
إذا كان الأمر شديد مرض شديد.
If there happens to be a severe sickness or illness.
ولكن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم حينما أمر عائشة كان بإمكانها أن ترقي نفسها وكان بإمكان الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يرقيها.
So what we're trying to extract here is that Aisha was able to perform the ruqya upon her own self. There's nothing preventing her, there was no illness or difficulty upon her. So from this we can extract and see that it's permissible for a person to go and ask someone to carry out ruqya upon them.
ولكن مع هذا كله لا بد للإنسان أن يتعلم بنفسه كيف يرقي نفسه. So
putting all this aside, the person still needs to learn how to perform the ruqya appropriately and to try and cure themselves.
فإذا جاء الإنسان يريد أن يرقي نفسه نقول له أولا لا بد أن تتذكر أن أكثر البلايا هي بسبب الذنوب والمعاصي.
So the first thing when a person wants to try to heal themselves in the carrying out of ruqya, that we find the first thing the person needs to understand is many people or some of the sufferings that we are facing is due to primarily the sins that we carry out and we commit ourselves.
وأن الله ما ابتلى عبده إلا ليتوب ويرجع إليه.
Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests and places obstacles and difficulties upon the human being, upon the believer, so the person may begin to repent back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
وابتلي من هم خير منا وهم الأنبياء ومن جاء بعدهم فكانوا يلجؤون إلى الدعاء والاستغفار.
So you find the people who came before us, for example, the messengers and the prophets were far better than us, but yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested and placed them in trials and difficulties to bring a better devotion and commitment towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the entrance of making dua and supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
وهكذا كان يفعل الصحابة والتابعون ومن بعدهم.
And thus we find that the companions who at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and those who came after them used to carry out the same practice as well.
وهنا سؤال نسأله للشخص لماذا تريد أن تسترقي؟
So here the Sheikh says that I want to pose this question: why does a person want to carry out this ruqya or want to be able to perform ruqya?
هل هو بسبب أمراض وعلامات؟
Is it some sicknesses, some illnesses, and some signs of that disease or that illnesses?
أم أنك تريد أن ترقي نفسك للبركة والتحصين؟
Or do you want to carry out this ruqya upon yourself or to gaining some blessings and to better yourself, to better your condition?
كل هذا جائز ومباح.
And all of this is permissible and allowed inside the Sharia if a person performs ruqya upon themselves.
فالدعاء ينفع مما نزل ومما لم ينزل.
So dua will benefit the individual.
ينفع مما نزل من القدر ومما ينزل من القدر.
So dua is something that will benefit whatever has been destined for the individual, that it will prevent it and stops greater harm befalling the individual.
هل تشتكي من أمراض غريبة، من أعراض غريبة، علامات غريبة؟
Do you suffer from some strange illnesses or diseases or certain signs or symbols that you find are very strange that you're suffering or you're going through?
هل تشتكي من أمراض لم تجد عند الطبيب علاجا لها؟
Do you complain from a suffering or illness or disease whereby the doctors are not able to cure it or find a cure for that illness that you're suffering?
في السابق الناس لم يكونوا يعلمون أمر الأرواح وقضيتها.
So previously people did not know the signs of diseases and illnesses that existed before.
ولكن بعد أن علموا أصبحوا يلجؤون إلى الطب الشرعي وإلى الطب الروحي.
So we find that when people began to discover illnesses and diseases, they began to turn to whether it be the medical doctors or the spiritual doctors began to turn to them to cure themselves.
فإذا لم يجد علاجا عند الطبيب لجأ إلى الراقي أو إلى أن يقرأ على نفسه.
So if they could not find the cure or the healing of the medical illness by a doctor, then they would turn to one who would carry out the spiritual incantation, the ruqya sharia, turn to that individual, read Quran upon them.
والصحيح أن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا اشتكى شيء جمع كفيه وقرأ ومسح ونفث.
So we find that the Prophet ﷺ, if something would be troubling him or be a difficulty upon him, then he would blow spit into his, slight spittle into his hands and recite the Quran and wipe it over his body.
ولكن الأمر يختلف إلى بعض الإصابات كحادث أو احتراق، فهنا نقول الإنسان تذهب مباشرة إلى الطبيب.
So obviously there could be other incidences which are quite clear. A person could have been burnt or could have been harmed or an injury that takes place. So here the person needs to go directly to the medical doctor for that ailment or that treatment.
ولكن كثيرا من الأمراض تكون بسبب عين وتكون بسبب سحر وتكون بسبب أذى من الشياطين.
But unfortunately we find that many of the illnesses or diseases that we find that many people are suffering from is due to the evil eye, due to magic and the touching of shaitan, the harming of the jinn on that individual.
وقد تكون إصابات عضوية طبيعية بدون عين وبدون سحر.
And also at the same time we have to understand that it could be just general illnesses, sicknesses that a person has which are not linked to the external or the hidden world. They are genuine illnesses or sicknesses the person is facing.
ولكن الشياطين يزيدون في الأذى حتى في الأمراض العضوية.
But we find that at times the devils, they can begin to increase that pain or that ailment the person is facing inside their body, increase that pain from going beyond a medical condition to become something of this world.
ابن القيم رحمه الله تعالى يقول أن الإنسان إذا ابتلي أو أصيب تؤذيه الشياطين وتزيد في أذاه.
So we find that Ibn Qayyim, he mentions that when a believer is tested or harmed with certain difficulties or obstacles, then you find that the jinn and the shayateen, they begin to increase in harming that individual, causing pain to that individual.
فيقول وبالأذكار والأدعية النبوية مما يستنزل به الأرواح الملكية حتى تدفع شرور الشياطين عن هذا الإنسان.
So we find that he mentioned that when a person becomes vigilant upon the adhkar, the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the morning, in the evening, and seeking a cure via the prophetic traditions, we find this becomes a source of protection for that individual and removing the evil. So angels will descend to protect that individual and pushing away and expelling any form of evil that could be coming towards that individual.
هل تشتكي من أعراض غريبة في جسدك كتشوهات مثلا؟ So do you find this strange things that occur in your life or that you feel and change
in your skin rash or disease that could be there, or strange feelings that you feel which don't seem to medically seem to be correct.
أو ظهور آثار غريبة على الجلد مثل ما تقولون أنتم scratch.
Yeah, so you find that strange things begin to appear in your body, a scratch or some signs on your skin or your body that just seem to appear on your body.
أو تقيؤ للدم.
Or you begin to vomit out blood.
أو ترى خيالات.
Or you see dreams or images inside your mind.
في اليقظة.
Whilst you're awake.
أو تسمع أصوات غريبة في البيت.
We hear strange sounds inside the house.
فبعضهم يسمع طرقا.
So sometimes people may hear a knocking sound inside the house.
وبعضهم مثلا يسمع صوت قط.
Some of them may hear the sound of a cat, a kitten inside the house.
وبعضهم يسمع أشخاص يتكلمون حقيقة هكذا يسمع.
And some people may even hear people are physically, actually, verbally are speaking inside the house and no one is there.
هل تشكو من سرقات شيء يسرق منك في البيت؟
Do you complain or suffer from that? Some items get stolen or begin to get missing inside your home.
هل تشم روائح غريبة في البيت؟
Do you smell strange smells inside the house?
بعضهم قد يشم رائحة جميلة مثل البرفيوم واضحة رائحته.
So sometimes a person may smell good perfumes, sweet smelling perfumes, fragrances inside the house.
وبعضهم يشم رائحة الكهرباء واحتراقها أو مسها.
Sometimes a person will be smelling the smell of something burning, electrical burning, the appliance could be burning inside the house.
وبعضهم يشم رائحة البحر ومن في البيت يشمونها يقولون نشم رائحة البحر.
And sometimes a person could be smelling the smell of the ocean, the sea, the sand, etc., the ocean, the smell of the seaside. The person will smell that inside their home.
وبعضهم يرى أناس يمشون أمامه في المنزل.
And sometimes a person may see that people are walking in front of them or walking around them inside the house.
هذه الأعراض حينما يراها الإنسان لابد أن يلجأ إلى العلاج الروحي.
So when a person sees these elements, the person needs to return back to a spiritual cure.
ثم إن بعضهم يشتكي من أعراض يعرفها المجتمع كله كالسحر مثلا.
So some of these harms or these effects that we find that the person will be suffering from is what the whole of society knows about the essence of the truth. For example, magic.
نعم عندهم التعاويذ مثلا في المنزل.
So you find there could be an amulet which has been placed inside the house.
أو يقول هناك من يرش على باب البيت مواد غريبة أشياء غريبة.
So you find there could be somebody that's pouring or throwing some substances on the front of the door of the house.
وبعضهم يقول دائما أرى طير مذبوح عند باب البيت أو قطة.
So the person may complain that they see a bird whose head has been decapitated or a cat which has been killed, etc., lying outside their house.
أو يكون عنده مريض فيه شيطان وينطق هذا الشيطان ويسرع.
So you find a person could be sick and then you find the person will scream and shout and shaitan speaking via this individual.
كل هذه الأمور تحتاج من الإنسان أن يبدأ يتعلم ماذا يصنع في نفسه حتى يتأكد هل هو سليم أو غير سليم.
So all these affairs leads the person to begin to decide or begin to study whether that person is in a state of good health or in a state of sickness.
إذا أردت أن تفعل ذلك بنفسك عليك أن تجلس في مكان خال من الصور ومن التماثيل.
So if you want to carry out the diagnosis of your own self, then the person needs to sit in an environment whereby it's totally empty, with the meaning that there are no pictures on display or no statues or idols placed inside that area.
البيت الذي فيه صور وتماثيل لا تدخله الملائكة.
Because we know that a house which has pictures on display or statues inside that house or images, then the angels do not enter into that house.
فتنظف بيتك من هذا ثم تكون على وضوء هو الأفضل وليس واجب.
So then clear your house, clear that environment from these elements, and then the performance of ablution of wudu, even though it's not obligatory, but it's something which is recommended for a person to do.
وكذلك إذا كان عندك التعاويذ في البيت أو أخذتها من أحد لا بد أن تخرجها وتتلفها.
And if you have any amulets that on you or inside your house, or somebody has given you these amulets, you need to get rid of them and destroy these amulets.
حتى ولو قالوا لك أنها من القرآن فإنها غالبا لا تكون من القرآن.
Even if the person has gifted them to you, given them to you and says that it contains the Quran, in general we know that the majority of these amulets, they do not contain the Quran within them.
وغالبا ما يخدع كثير من المسلمين إذا رأوا فيها شيء من القرآن وكلام آخر. هذا هو الشرك. نصف لك يا رب ونصف للشياطين.
And that's why that many of the Muslims are deceived that when as soon as they see an amulet, they see some writing of the Quranic scripture, they think it's something which is acceptable. But unfortunately you find that many times you find these amulets that there are some portions of words of the Quran, and at the same time you find elements of a clear shirk which are written down as well.
فيمكن للإنسان أن يجلس أو أن يستلقي على ظهره كيفما أراد أن يجلس أو يأخذ وضعية يستطيع أن يفعل.
So the person then sits down and places themselves in a comfortable form of sitting where they feel comfortable, and then they carry out the practice.
سواء يفتح عينيه أو يغمضها كلها سواء.
So whether a person keeps their eyes open or closes their eyes, both are the same.
فيجلس ويضع يده على رأسه.
The person sits down and places one's hand on top of one's head.
أو يضعها على المكان الذي يشتكي منه إن كان عنده ألم.
Or he places it on the part of the body or wherever he feels the pain, the person places their hand there.
حتى لو كان هذا المكان عورته.
Even if this place happens to be their private parts, they place their hand there.
لأن الحديث واضح أن المسلم يضع يده على المكان الذي يشتكي منه. فإن كان يشتكي من عورته من قبله من دبره يضع يده على هذا المكان ويبدأ في الدعاء وفي الرقية.
So we find that the person who is suffering from any ailment based upon the hadith that they place their hand wherever there's the pain. So even if the pain or the suffering happens to be from one of the private areas, whether it's the front or the back, the person is allowed to place their hand there.
ويمكن له أن يكتفي بالقراءة فقط.
And it's sufficient for the person just to recite.
فإذا بدأ سواء قرأ قرآن أو دعا دعاء كله صحيح.
So whether the person reads the Quran or carries out some supplication or makes some dua, it is all acceptable and correct.
فإذا بدأ يقرأ يستطيع أن يقرأ سورة الفاتحة والمعوذات ونحوها.
So if the person wants to recite the Quran, the person will begin by reading Surah Al-Fatiha and then reading the surahs, the two end surahs Al-Falaq and Nas of seeking of refuge and whatever is similar to that.
أو يقرأ الرقية الشرعية وهي معروفة غالبا عند الكثير.
And you find that there's certain verses of the Quran which are well known to most of the people of reciting of the Quran, the performance of ruqyah.
وقد يكون استخدام السماعات في الأذنين بالمايك أقوى تأثيرا.
So a person can place some headphones and use a microphone to increase the effect of the recitation of Quran upon the individual.
وقد يكون السبيكر إذا وضعه على مكان الألم ورفع الصوت تأثيره أقوى.
So a person can place the speaker if they want that the place of the area where they're suffering and raise the voice, and inshallah it becomes more stronger, more powerful upon that area.
بعض الناس يقول أقرأ على نفسي المعوذات والفاتحة ولا أتأثر، ولكن حينما أذهب إلى الراقي يقرأ آيات معينة فأتأثر. لماذا؟
So sometimes a person may pose the question, a person will carry out the ruqyah themselves, read Al-Fatiha, read the final two surahs of the Quran, and they feel no impact, no effect of these verses. But when they go to a person, a raqi, the person reads it, they may read the same or read some other certain passages of the Quran, they begin to feel some effect within themselves. What is the reason, or the possible reason for this?
القرآن كله شفاء.
The Quran, all of it is a cure.
ولكن هناك آيات لها تأثير مثلا على السحر.
There are certain verses inside the Quran which have an impact in the removal of magic.
وآيات لها تأثير على العين والحسد.
And there are certain verses inside the Quran which have an impact in the removal of the evil eye and jealousy.
وآيات الجن وآيات النار لها تأثير على الجن الذي يكون في الجسد.
And thus we find that verses which talk about the jinn, talk about the hellfire, they have an impact to harm the jinn and to disturb them.
لهذا إما أن يكون هذا الشخص عنده معلومات عن هذا الأمر أو يذهب إلى راقي ويستفيد ماذا يقرأ ثم يطبق ذلك على نفسه.
So either the person has that knowledge themselves to know certain verses, the impact that they have, or they go to one who performs the ruqyah and sits with them or learns from them and is able to then extract these are the verses to be used or they can recite themselves.
كثير من الناس والمرضى يقول قراءة الراقي أقوى من رقيتي لنفسي.
And many people, they complain about this or they highlight this, the Raqi who carries out the actual Ruqya, that the impact of their recital or their recitation has a far more bigger impact than a person sitting down and reading themselves.
هذه حقيقة.
And this is a reality, this is a fact.
الإمام ابن القيم يتكلم على نفث الراقي نفثه، يقول لأن نفسه تعودت على القراءة فأصبح مثل السلاح القوي.
So if Ibn Qayyim discusses that the plausible reason of this impact that we find, because the Raqi is continuously reading the Quran and the impact of the recital, that we find that even when they make their spittle, when they spit on the person, you find that it has such a strong impact, it becomes like a weapon which is harming the individual, harming the person who possessed.
الراقي يقرأ في اليوم 3 ساعات 4 ساعات.
In the person who's a Raqi, he reads 3 to 4 hours in a day, he reads the Quran continuously.
فنحن نقول لهذا الشخص ابدأ تعود أن تقرأ كثيرا فستجد أن قراءتك أصبحت قوية.
And so thus we say, based upon this, that the person should begin via an excessive recitation of the Quran and reading it more and more, and this will in strengthen oneself and have an impact upon oneself.
ثم مسألة النية أمرها هام في الرقية.
And then we find indeed the importance of the intention. It has a great impact, a great role to play in the performance of ruqya.
أكثر من يقولون رقيتنا لا تؤثر بنفسنا نسألهم.
Many people who complain that the ruqya has no impact upon themselves, we ask them this question.
بأي نية تقرأ؟
With which intention, or what intention are you reciting?
أكثرهم يقول أنا أقرأ هكذا.
But many people say, I'm just reciting just like this, no real focus or attention.
فنقول لهم لا، إذا قرأت قل مثلا اللهم إني أعلم أن كل حرف من كلامك يدمر الجبال.
So you find when a person, when they begin to recite, they should have that intent within themselves and utter such words that, oh Allah, indeed, that these words have an impact to even break or destroy the mountains.
الله سبحانه وتعالى يقول لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله.
So indeed, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned towards the end of Surah Al-Habshī, that we find we sent down this Quran upon the mountains, you find that the mountains would begin to tremble and cleft asunder and turn into dust due to the fear of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear of the Quran.
حينما يقرأ الكلام كلام الله ويتفكر أن هذا الكلام ينزل على هذه الأمراض فيدمرها حينها تكون نيته أقوى.
So we find that when a person reads with this intention that these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they're able to destroy, obliterate, take away all these sicknesses, diseases, and they wipe them away, then that will strengthen the recitation with that niyyah when a person is reading the Quran.
وحينما ينفث الشخص نقول له كيف تنفث؟ يقول أنفث هكذا. ولكن ما هي نيتك؟ يقول لا أدري.
Even when the person that performs the spittle, this a general spittle that they may make, we know, will focus upon it. So once again, what is your intention when you carry out that spittle after reading the Quran?
فنحن نقول له نفثك هذا هو خلاصة كلام الله الذي قرأته فأنت تنفث به فتقول هذا النفث ينزل على كل علة فيزيلها بإذن الله.
So a person makes the intention that this is the summary of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if they are coming out via this spittle, and whatever is there, via this it will destroy or wipe out whatever difficulty or hardship that may be there.
أحد الإخوة كان مصاب بالسرطان.
One of the brothers who was suffering from cancer,
وقرروا له أن يأخذ إشعاعا كيماويا 8 جلسات 8 مرات.
So we find that he was diagnosed to carry out chemotherapy 8 sessions of chemotherapy to be carried out upon this individual.
والذين ابتلاهم الله بهذا يقول إذا أخذنا جلسة واحدة بهذا الكيماوي نخرج نرى الموت.
So it's been mentioned that there's one session of this intense chemotherapy, and it's as if the person is gone into a state of death or coming out from a near enough death experience of the magnitude of the impact of this chemotherapy.
والحمد لله أخذ جلستين فقط بدل 8.
That this person only took 2 sessions instead of 8 sessions.
لأنه عكف على نفسه بقراءة القرآن يسترقي به.
Because he decided to sit down and carry out ruqya perform and to cure oneself via the incantation.
يقول كنت حينما أقرأ أقول يا رب كلامك أقوى من أي دواء.
And he said that every time he used to read, he used to say, "Oh my Lord, indeed your speech is more powerful than any medicine."
قال وحينما كنت أنفث على جسمي أقول يا رب كلام هذا النفث أقوى من إشعاعات المستشفى.
He said, and when I used to make that spittle, he said that this spittle is more powerful and stronger than the lights or the heat or the process of chemotherapy. It's more powerful than that.
للإنسان أن يأتي بماء وزيت وعسل.
The person comes with water, with honey and with oil.
أو زيت حبة سوداء أو طعام أو أي شيء يضعه وقت الرقية ثم ينفث على هذه الأشياء.
So whether it be black seed oil or food or whatever it may be, the person brings it and then the person blows after ruqya upon this.
حتى لو كانت أعشابا.
Even if it happens to be any lunch, whatever it happens to be, the person brings it forth.
سواء كان سدر.
Whether it happens to be the local leaves or something.
أو أي شيء قسط هندي أي شيء من هذه الأعشاب.
So we find the crystal hindi, these are all natural substances that we find, which have all been mentioned to be used.
فيستطيع أن ينفث عليها أيضا.
So a person can also blow upon them as well.
فيستخدم من العلاج ما كان مشروبا أو مأكولا.
So a person takes that, whether they have to drink it or they eat it, they take it.
أو دهان يدهن به جسمه.
Or it happens to be a form like a cream, or the person will wipe it over their body.
يغتسل به.
Or the person washes themselves with it.
أو يتبخر به.
Or the person the burning of the coal burns it.
ومسألة البخور بالأعشاب فيها فتاوى من الشيخ بن باز رحمه الله تعالى.
And there's religious verdicts given by Sheikh Ibn Baz about the use of bukhur to be used in this manner.
والشيخ بن جبرين.
Ibn Jibreen as well.
والشيخ صالح الفوزان.
And Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan as well.
مكتوبة وبأصواتهم مسجلة.
Which has been, these religious verdicts, decrees have been written, and also they've been verbally expressed by them as well.
الشيخ بن باز يقول أهم شيء ألا يكون المستخدم محرما.
So Sheikh Baz mentioned that anything, there should be no incorrect practice or format should be used whilst carrying out this blowing.
وألا يكون نجسا.
And it's not something which is impure.
وألا يعتقد الشخص أن هذا هو الشافي بل الشافي هو الله سبحانه وتعالى.
And the person doesn't place reliance upon whatever substance that they're using, whether they've mentioned the oil, etc., whatever it may be, and rather their reliance and the deeper inner trust is that the one that cures and heals is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is just the ways or means of getting to that goal.
بعضهم يقول هل أستطيع أن أستخدم ماء زمزم أقرأ فيه؟ نقول نعم.
First, some people ask the question, is a person allowed to use the water of Zamzam, is a person allowed to recite upon it and use it? And the answer is yes.
الماء العادي الذي نشربه نعم.
Even normal water, are we allowed to drink upon that? Yes, we are.
ماء البحر أقرأ فيه وأغتسل به نعم.
The water from the ocean, I'm allowed to recite upon it and then to bathe and to cleanse myself with it? Yes, you are.
ماء المطر وماء الآبار نقول نعم.
The rain water, person allowed to use that, or the water from the well, is the person allowed to use that and perform recitation upon that? Then the answer is yes.
هل نضع في هذا الماء شيء من الأعشاب؟ ممكن أن تضع ما شئت.
Are we allowed to mix some of the utensils or some of the elements that we used? Are we allowed to mix them with water? Yes, you are.
بعضهم يقول جربنا وضعنا قليل من الملح فكان تأثيره قوي. نقول افعل ولكن انتبه أن ينصرف عقلك أن هذا هو فقط العلاج.
So sometimes people may experiment and use, for example, salt, and then it becomes a form of healing. But like we said, there's no hard and fast rule towards this, and the person should pay attention towards this and not think that because of that salt that the cure has been carried out.
إذا رقى الإنسان نفسه عليه أن يراعي ألا يستعجل الإجابة من الله سبحانه وتعالى.
And the person who carries out the recitation for themselves should not hasten in thinking that the response will come immediately to them, but the person is to be patient in carrying out the recitation.
لأن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول يستجاب لأحدكم ما لم يعجل.
As we find in the prophetic tradition, every single one of you is responding as long as the person does not become hasty in requesting for the response to be given to them.
وكذلك من وقت ما يجلس يقرأ على نفسه يتنبه أنه لن ييأس ولن يصيبه القنوط من رحمة الله سبحانه وتعالى.
And likewise, when a person sits down and begins to recite upon oneself, one should not despair, not fret, not become over-worried and despair from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
فيجلس يقرأ على نفسه وهو راض بقضاء الله. إذا شفيت شفيت وإذا لم أشفى هذا هو الخير الذي يريده الله سبحانه وتعالى لي.
So the person who carries out the incantation himself, if they are cured in that sitting, then this is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're happy with that and content with that. And if they are not cured, they are still happy and content and know that this is from the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
بعضهم قد يتأثر من رقيته لنفسه بعد 5 دقائق وبعضهم بعد نصف ساعة وبعضهم بعد ساعة.
So you find that every person differs in the impact of the recitation of ruqya upon oneself, sometimes after 5 minutes, sometimes after 30 minutes, sometimes after an hour. The impact before is upon that individual.
قد يرقي المرء نفسه فيشعر بنعاس.
So a person may recite upon their own self and they begin to feel some form of sleep or slumber,
أو
yawning,
حرارة أو برودة.
or they feel heat or excessive cold,
أو اهتزاز وقشعريرة.
or they find some type of awakening of the feelings upon their skin, upon their body,
أو وخز في الجسم مثل الإبرة.
or you find that it's a type of poking like of needles on the body of the individual.
أو حركة للعضلات في الجسم.
You find just excessive muscular movements of the organs of the body.
أو يأتيه تجشؤ كثير جشاء تكرير.
When a person begins a lot of excessive, a lot of burping begins to take place of the individual from the body.
وبعضهم قد يشعر بحكة في جسمه.
Or sometimes a person can feel movement inside their body.
وبعضهم يشعر بآلام شديدة في مختلف أجزاء جسمه.
Sometimes a person may feel excessive pain in different points or different areas of the body.
وبعضهم قد يسقط على الأرض.
And some may even collapse and fall upon the earth.
أو تشتد يده أو رجله بألم شديد.
Or you find that the person's body becomes stiff due to a pain or great pain is placed in that area.
أو يأتيه بكاء شديد أو ضحك شديد.
Or the person begins to weep and begins to cry, or excessive laughter begins to take place.
فيقول ماذا عندي وما هي حالتي.
So a person asks them, what is with me, or what is my state, or what is my condition?
نقول هنا لابد أن تتعلم أعراض العين، تتعلم أعراض السحر وأعراض المس.
Thus the person needs to learn the concept of ruqya and the concept of the touching of the devils.
وحتى نسهل الموضوع على الشخص نقول ابدأ اقرأ آيات الرقية فقط.
And thus to make it easy for the person, we say to the person to begin by firstly reading the verses of ruqya.
وسجل ملاحظات.
And then make note of what begins to occur or take place.
ثم اقرأ الآيات التي هي أكثر ما يقرأها الرقاء للعين والحسد.
And then focus and read those verses or those passages where you find that the raqis have used to removal of the evil eye and jealousy or magic. Sorry.
وهي الآيات التي فيها ذكر عين وذكر حسد وما جاء في معنى.
And you find these are the verses which contain the contextual concept of al-ayn, of the evil eye or jealousy, whatever comes in that context of such verses.
موجودة في المواقع المتوفرة.
And these are available or present in different locations inside the Quran, different
وتسجل
places.
ملاحظاتك.
And record, make a note of your sufferings or whatever you begin to notice.
ثم بعد ذلك تقرأ الآيات التي فيها ذكر السحر والسحرة.
Then after that, begin to recite the verses which contain the word magic, or the sorcerers or the magicians begin to read those specific passages or specific verses.
بعضهم يشعر بأعراض في آيات العين والحسد مثلا فقط.
So sometimes the person may feel some impact only in the verses which contain the words of al-ayn or al-hasad, just find some impact during recital of those verses.
أو السحر فقط.
Or during only recital of the verses that deal with or touch upon or talk about magic.
وبعضهم قد يشعر أعراض في كل الآيات.
And sometimes the person may feel by a recital of either verses, throughout the recital of the verses dealing with al-ayn or al-hasad or the verse of magic, the person feels that suffering or feels that pain or that hardship.
هل يمكن أن يكون في الإنسان مس وعين وسحر؟ نقول نعم ممكن.
Is it possible for a person to be affected by the touch of shaitan and magic and the evil eye? Is all three that possible? Yes, it is possible.
ولا نكبر الموضوع.
We don't want to
ليس شيء يخوف.
to scare the people and make it a big subject to make people become fearful.
وأوضح لكم لأن كثير من الناس لا يفهمون هذا الأمر.
So I just want to explain and make it easy because many people don't seem to understand the affair that it's possible that all three elements can exist.
غالبا الساحر إذا جاء يسحر لابد أن يرسل جني موكل بهذا السحر.
And thus we find that normally what begins to take place is the magician will send a jinn who will be carrying that magic to bring it to that individual.
فإذا دخل هذا الجن في الجسم أصبح عند هذا الشخص مس.
So when the jinn enters his body, now obviously this becomes by default the touching any of the jinn of that individual.
وكذلك العين يتبعها الشيطان وحسد ابن آدم.
And thus you find that the evil eye is followed with the devil and followed by the person who may have that evil eye or that intention towards that individual.
فإذا دخل هذا الجن المتسلط بالعين نقول هذا الإنسان ممسوس.
So thus you find that when the evil eye which is connected with the jinn enters the individual, it becomes that this person is now become possessed.
فهنا نقول للشخص إذا تأثرت بآيات أكثر من الأخرى ركز على هذه الآيات حتى تنتهي.
So thus you find a person begin to see certain symbols that when certain ayat of al-ayn or al-jasad or al-hasad begin to have an impact upon the individual and focus upon those verses even more.
فإذا وجد أن في جسمه مثلا مس يركز على هذا المس.
So if a person feels that there is some form of possession, the person focuses upon the possession.
لا نهمل أمر الصدقة في العلاج.
And also we should not belittle the concept of giving of sadaqah whilst trying to cure oneself.
أحد الإخوة كانت متسلطة عليه ملكة من الجن.
So we find that one of the brothers was suffering from that one of the leaders of the jinn was attacking this individual or harming this individual.
وكل ما تقترب منه في نومه ما تستطيع.
Every time
تقترب منه في النوم ما تستطيع أن تفعل معه شيء.
So every time in his sleep he tried to come to him, he was not able to harm or do anything to him.
فكانت تقول له إذا تترك الشيء الذي في يدك اليمنى سأفعل بك ما أشاء.
So he said that if you leave whatever is inside in your right hand, and meaning your right, I'll do whatever I want to do with you.
فحينما سأل قال له معبر الرؤى أنت تنفق صدقة كثيرا؟ قال نعم. قال هذا هو حصنك الذي يحفظك به الله سبحانه وتعالى.
So when he described that what was taking place to him, he said that this was the giving of sadaqah which became a form of a fortress and protection, protecting from this harm coming or befalling or coming upon you.
الصدقة تطفئ غضب الرب.
Indeed, sadaqah, giving a charity, it takes away, extinguishes the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
وتقي مصارع السوء.
And it takes away any form of hardships or difficulties upon that individual.
ثم أيضا الدعاء لإخوانك المرضى المسحورين بظهر الغيب.
And thus we find also to make supplication, make dua for the person who they're absent from you, and not in the absence, to make dua for the individual to be cured.
فإذا دعوت اللهم اشف كل معيون وكل مسحور وكل ممسوس الملك يقول لك ولك بمثل.
And thus when a person makes that supplication, Allah cure the person who may be suffering from the evil eye or person who may be possessed, then indeed the angel is responding for you, be the same, be likewise, a way of protecting oneself.
ولا يكتفي الإنسان بهذه الرقية التي يرقي بها نفسه وبالدهان الذي يقوم به، بل لا بد أن يكون عنده برنامج قوي في العلاج.
So a person should not suffice by just reading these verses of the Quran that we mentioned, or by protecting themselves by whether it be rubbing the oil, etc. on their body. There needs to be a set syllabus, a set program of what they're going to carry out.
من أقوى البرامج المحافظة على سورة البقرة يوميا.
And the most strongest way of protecting oneself or setting a program for oneself is to preserve and to the recital of the whole of Surah Al-Baqarah every single day.
عندنا أخوات يقرأن البقرة في اليوم 7 مرات و10 مرات.
And we have some sisters that they read it 7 up to maybe 10 times a day, they recite it.
عدوك إذا ضربته ضربة واحدة يختلف إذا مسكت به وتضربه في طول اليوم.
Your enemy, if you hit him just once, it differs from you to hold him and to continuously carry on hitting him.
وإذا فعلت معه هكذا كل يوم سيتركك.
So you find that if you do this every single day to your enemy, the enemy will eventually leave you alone.
ومن أقوى البرامج أيضا آية الكرسي.
And so amongst the program a person can set is the recital of the verse of the throne of Ayat al-Kursi.
ذكرها شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية.
Ibn Taymiyyah mentions, talks about this.
ورأينا أثرها القوي في العلاج.
And we've seen that the impact of this in curing individuals.
أن نقرأها مرة واحدة أو 5 دقائق.
To recite it once or for 5 minutes continuously.
أيضا الاستمرار في قراءتها ولو طول اليوم لها نتائج في نفس اليوم.
And thus we find that even to recite it throughout the day or the whole of the day has a great impact in bringing about results.
وهي سهلة لمن لا يستطيع قراءة البقرة ولا يستطيع يحمل المصحف فيستطيع أن يردد آية الكرسي كثيرا.
So we find that a person is not able to recite the whole of Surah Al-Baqarah, obviously maybe difficult, 286 odd verses, then at least a person can begin to focus on reading of Ayat al-Kursi.
بعضهم قرأها وتأثر تأثير بسيط.
And some people read it and a simple effect, impact begins to take place upon them.
وأحدهم قرأها وقال الحمد لله في نفس اليوم جاءت نتائج جيدة.
And others have said that in the same day of the reading of it, good results became apparent upon them.
قلت له كيف قرأتها؟
He said, how did you recite them? How do you recite this verse?
قال أنا قبل أن أقرأ قلت يا رب هذه أعظم آية وأقوى آية في كتاب.
And he said that amongst the reason here is that when a person before they read this verse said, this is the greatest verse, the most strongest verse, O Lord, inside the Quran.
قال يا
Amongst your
رب
words.
أذهب بها كل عين وسحر ومس ومرض علي وعلى أبنائي.
He said, and via this verse take away any evil eye, any jealousy upon myself, upon my children, upon my family members, remove it away.
انظر هذا نيته إلى ماذا عين سحر مس كل شيء.
And this is, look at the intention, this individual, the removal of affliction, of the evil eye, the touching of the jinn, any form of possession, all this intention the person is making whilst reading this verse.
والأول قال أنا أصبحت أرددها هكذا فقط إذا نيته أضعف من نية ذلك.
So one who just begins to say that I'm just reciting it, the intention or the impact is weaker than the one who makes a stronger intention.
أنا وأخي واقفين في الصلاة عقله معلق في العرش وأنا عقلي معلق في السوق نيته أقوى كلنا واقفين نصلي ونؤدي ونقرأ لكن هذه النية تصل بالإنسان مراحل طيبة.
So thus we find that even if we take the ritual practice of myself and the Sheikh standing inside prayer, that we find that the intention or the focus is what differs. All of us are offering the prayer together, all of us, we stand here in the rows, but one's mind could be focusing on the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, focusing towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and another one's mind could be in the marketplace. So both of us are doing exactly the same action, but by our intention, our focus, the impact becomes something which is different.
القنوت على السحرة وعلى الشياطين المتسلطين وعلى الحساد.
And thus we find the reading of dua and supplication, making these rituals is something which overpowers in the dua and salah that we find a person makes, making a supplication, it becomes a form of overcoming the harms of the magicians and the jinn, etc.
أكثر المرضى ينشغلوا بالجن المتسلط عليهم.
Many of the diseases are whereby the jinn has overcome and possessed in the individual.
فنحن نقول حينما تدعو لا تدعو على هذا الجن فقط، تدعو على الذي أرسله، على الرئيس.
So don't make dua upon the one that's entered the body, but make dua against the one who sent against that curse, or make dua against that individual who sent it.
بعضهم يستصعب يقول إذا دعوت يعني كيف يعني يصل هذا الدعاء إلى هناك، أو أن هذا الأمر صعب لأنه يقيسه بعقله وهذا خطأ.
So we find that many times, many of us, the thought and the perception may come in our mind that how, if I make dua, that this will travel to this or will have this impact. And the mistake here is that we're using our rationale, we're using our intellect to understand to think that how will this dua travel and have an impact in this hidden world.
السحر في القبر، السحر في بحر، كيف نخرجه؟ نقول بالدعاء.
We said that if the magic is inside a grave, if the magic is inside the ocean, how can we expel it? How can we remove it? How will dua be able to take it out?
وهزي إليك بجذع النخلة فعلت السبب.
And so that's we find in the Quran when it mentions to Maryam alayhi salam, it says, gave her the reason that how can fresh water, how can dates drop from the palm tree? But she's told to just carry out, do the action.
فالإنسان يدعو الله سبحانه وتعالى. ورأيت أحد الإخوة في غير هذه البلاد في أوروبا أصيب بسحر فقلت له ادعو الله.
So we find that the person takes the avenues, the ways of protecting themselves of what they've been told to do. And the Sheikh mentioned that an individual in one of the European countries that he'd been suffering from some magic, he said to him to make dua.
وكان عنده مطعم كبير.
He had a big restaurant he had.
قلت له ابحث عن السحر.
He said, go and search for the magic.
قال أين أبحث؟ كبير المكان.
He said, where can I go and search? It's a big place, a big dwelling, where can I find it?
اليوم الثاني قال سبحان الله أنا دعوت الله وأنا جالس على الكرسي قال أريد أن أتحرك فوجدت الكرسي كأن في تحته شيء.
So he said that I made us and said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the second day, just sitting in my chair, reclining in my chair, and I moved it slightly, and as if underneath the chair, there was something on the foot or one of the legs of the chair.
فجاء بكيس صغير فيه قطعة من الرخام الذي للدرج حينما يصعد الناس كأن الناس لا يصعدون في هذا المكان.
So he took out a small a cloth or something to become totally flat so people don't pay attention to it. He found this, he took it out.
وأبطل الحمد لله.
And then he was cured by the removal of this.
وبذل السبب والله سبحانه وتعالى سهل له الأمر.
So he took the path, he took the way of trying to cure himself, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitated and made it easy for that person to be cured.
في حال صرع المريض وعدم تحكمه بنفسه.
So you find a person goes into an epileptic state, is not able to control themselves. What should a person do in this state?
بعضهم يدخل في حالة هستيرية.
So some people come into an hysterical format, they come into becoming hysterical.
يغيب عن الوعي يقول جاءني نوم استيقظت ما أدري أين أنا.
So the person goes to sleep and they wake up and they say they don't know where they are.
هنا نقول له لا بد أن تذهب إلى راقي ليساعدك فترة ووقتا من الزمان حتى تستطيع أن تقوم بهذا الأمر بنفسك.
So here the Sheikh mentioned the person should go to the Raqi who does the incantation to help them to come to a stable state, and then they're able to help their own selves, because now this person is losing their senses.
أحبتي في الله مهما تأخر العلاج اعلم أن الله سبحانه وتعالى يريد أن يسمع صوتك.
So, oh beloved brothers, no matter how long the cure or how long it takes for the person to be cured, know that deep down that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to hear your voice, wants to hear you, wants to see you making that dua to Him.
ويريد أن يطهرك من ذنوبك.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to purify you cleanse you from your sins.
وفي الحديث ولا يزال البلاء بالمؤمن ولا يزال يعني لن ينقطع البلاء عن المؤمن حتى يمشي على الأرض وما عليه خطيئة.
And as we find in the hadith, that the person remains continuously in difficulties and obstacles and hardships until there is no sin or no mistake. All of them are removed, there's no mistake that's left upon that individual.
والرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم في صحيح الجامع يقول حتى الهم والغم يصيب العبد المؤمن يكفر به من سيئاته.
And thus we find in the narration that we find that even the fear and the grief and the temperature, etc. the person faces, all this is a form of expiation for that individual.
الأمراض الروحية لها ميزة تختلف عن الأمراض العضوية.
We find that these illnesses, these hidden illnesses that we find, they are quite different, separate from the medical illnesses that we can decipher or we can visualize.
المريض الروحي تجده دائما بالقرآن وبالدعاء لأنه يعلم أن هذه الأمور تذهب بهذا الشيء.
So we find that the spiritual cure, the person while using the spiritual means is able to use them to be able to cure themselves.
والمريض مرض عضوي تجد عقله معلق مع الطبيب ما هي النتائج كيف الفحوصات.
And thus you find that the person who's attached to the medical cure is always asking what are the results, or how can a person, why is this not working, etc. Seems fails to understand how to cure themselves.
فإذا ابتلي اثنان في نفس الوقت وجئت تنظر إلى حالهم بعد شهر أو بعد سنة فقلت لهذا ماذا صنعت؟ يقول قرأت البقرة ودعوت دعوات كثيرة. وقلت هذا ماذا صنعت؟ ممكن ما قرأ البقرة ولا مرة واحدة.
And thus you find that after some time span you come to two individuals who may be suffering from the same disease that you find, that one may be in a better state or may even be cured. What would the reason be? If both of them are carrying out the same practice of the medical practice, but one will say that they have been reciting Surah Al-Baqarah and the other will say he possibly may have never even read it at all.
المريض العضوي قد تجده على حاله في معاصيه، وأما صاحب المرض الروحي تجده تغير حاله في صلاة وفي عبادة وبعد عن المعاصي.
And thus you find that the person who's got an illness or a disease and pays no attention in rectifying themselves and purifying themselves, still staying away from the prayers or sinning, you find it will be different from the impact of that individual who knows that they're facing some calamity or difficulty, that they become a stronger relationship and devotion towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
الله سبحانه وتعالى اختار لك هذا النوع من المرض لأنك ستكسب فيه حسنات كثيرة، فانتبه أن تقول ما أريد هذا الشيء.
So you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may have chosen or selected that this illness or this disease that you're facing may be a source or ways of increasing in doing of good deeds. So a person should not be questioning or trying to push this away.
امرأة كانت مبتلى ببلاء شديد من سحر ومس.
So you find that a woman was suffering from immense hardship or difficulty that she was facing of magic upon her.
وتعبت في العلاج سنوات.
And she got tired after so many years of treatment.
فقالت ما أحد ابتلي مثلي.
And she said that I don't think anybody has been tested or gone through trials and afflictions like I've been going through.
قلت لها لو خيرك الله سبحانه وتعالى بين مرضك وبين كانسر، قالت لا تكمل ما أريد، أحسن هذا الذي أنا فيه.
So the Sheikh said to her, would you prefer to have this disease or to have a cancer? And she stopped, she was speaking, said there's no need to complete, I'd rather have this disease than to be suffering from a threatening cancer.
وإحدى المريضات حينما شفيت عندنا وكانت فتاة في 17.
You find that one of the female patients who was cured by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while treatment the Sheikh was giving to her.
ومضت عن علاجها فترة شفيت الحمد لله.
After some time she was cured.
اتصلت مرة تقول يعني يا شيخ حرام الإنسان يدعو أن يعود إلى مرضه، قلت لماذا تدعين بهذا الدعاء؟ الحمد لله الذي شفاك.
And she said it's forbidden for a person to pray that that person should go back to the original state of illness or difficulty that they were facing.
قلت لها لماذا تقولي هذا؟ قالت الآن لا في سورة بقرة ولا قيام الليل.
She said that the very reason she's making a statement is because when she was suffering, she would make qiyamul layl, she would read Surah Al-Baqarah. So as she's saying that, I wish I had been in that original state, I would have been doing those actions that I was doing before.
أسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن ينفعنا بالقليل الذي سمعناه.
We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us from the small extraction of words of advice that we've given.
وأن يحفظنا وإياكم والمسلمين من كل سوء. صلى الله على نبينا محمد.
إله الكون قد زاد